first thing you want to consider is how much growth podcasts have experienced in recent years. Like that's both in terms of the number of listeners as well as the number of podcasts. There are actually more than 850,000 podcasts out there with over 30 million different episodes for us to listen to. And you can find a podcast on almost any topic, from true crime to Baby Yoda, or you can even listen to people just having conversations about their favorite things. There is something for everyone. And according to an extensive report from Edison on podcast consumers, the top 3 topics that listeners want to hear about are music, news and information, and entertainment. Other topics like technology, self-improvement, and business also generate considerable interest. So now, with over 850,000 podcasts to listen to, the next thing you're probably wondering is, who's listening? Well, based on Edison's research, over 51% of all Americans ages 12 and up have ever listened to a podcast, and that's about 144 million listeners, which is 20 million more than the previous year. So there's definite growth. And in terms of podcast consumers who listen on a more regular basis, 32% tune in every month. That's about 90 million listeners, or roughly 1 out of every 3 people in the US. So this is an increase from last year, which saw about 26% of listeners tune in monthly. Devoted listeners, or people who tune in every week, they make up 22% of the population in the US. This is the equivalent of roughly 62 million listeners, or nearly 1 out of every 4 people. So again, this is an increase from last year, which saw about 17% of listeners tuning in weekly. And today's weekly listeners tend to listen to about 7 different podcasts throughout the week. With there being just so many podcasts out there and so many listeners, it's only natural for brands and businesses to approach podcasts as a promising marketing tool. And beyond just sponsoring a podcast or purchasing airtime for advertising, a number of brands have also taken to producing their own podcasts, like Trader Joe's and their podcast Inside Trader Joe's, along with Google's This Week in Google and Samsung's What's Next. So podcasts have become pretty ubiquitous, and whether you're a podcaster or a company that wants to reach a wider audience by looking for some good podcasts to advertise on, the next thing that you need to consider is how these audiences are listening. And this also answers the question, just why are podcasts so popular? Well, podcasts have become so popular because of the convenience that they offer. Actually, the number one reason why people listen to podcasts is because they can do other things while listening, like grab onto a steering wheel and watch out for traffic, since both your hands and your eyes are free. And this is how a lot of people listen to podcasts, by multitasking. So while they do housework, drive, or walk their dogs. However, there's also a considerable amount of listeners who prefer to sit and not do anything else while they listen. But the sheer flexibility of being able to get up and start doing anything at any given moment is pretty appealing. So now, aside from how people listen to podcasts or what they do while they listen, the fourth thing that you want to consider is how much of a podcast gets listened to on average. Well, out of those 90 million people who listen on a monthly basis, 52% will actually listen to an entire podcast from start to finish. 41% will listen to more than half of a podcast, and only 7% will listen to less than half of a podcast. These are really impressive figures, especially considering that the average podcast is about 41 minutes long. Now, the fifth thing that you need to consider about podcasts is that no matter if you're a podcast creator or part of a brand that's interested in podcasts as a marketing tool, you need to measure performance, since what you don't measure can't be improved. And we need to consider this from 2 different perspectives. So if you represent a brand that's interested in finding podcasts for advertising or sponsorships, and of course, to make sure that nobody's trashing your product or service to all their listeners, you're gonna wanna monitor podcasts for any mentions of your brand. So this has multiple benefits, since it not only helps you keep an eye on and protect your brand reputation in the audio space, it also helps you identify potential podcasters to work with for advertising or to sponsor. So Brand24 is a media monitoring tool that monitors podcasts and the internet, so you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. Now, if you're a podcaster, you're gonna be a little more interested in how your podcast itself is performing. And podcast analytics tools like Chartable and Backtracks can help you analyze your listeners and your rankings, and also let you see if downloads of your podcast were actually played. And monitoring brand mentions isn't just restricted to brands who want to work with podcasters. It's also really helpful to monitor mentions of your podcast itself across the internet. Like, this can show you what kind of comments people are making about your podcast, what they like or dislike about it, and where these conversations are taking place. It's also a great way to find opportunities to thank and engage with your fans. All right, thanks for watching, guys. If you have any questions or comments about podcasts or how to monitor them, just let me know in the comment section below. And if you found this video helpful, feel free to like, share, and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, where you can find even more videos like this. All right, thanks again for watching. I hope you learned something new, and I will see you next time. Bye.